Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us here on INC Live for the UFC 296 preview show. My name is Karl Bainbridge and I am joined by the man on the right hand side of my screen. He is the Bob Cratchit to my Ebenezer Scrooge. He's my friend and yours. It's Joe Neal. Joe, thank you very much for joining us.
Very glad to be here, as always. And, with it being a festive time, I thought of a perfect tag team. Well, kind of, for this little bit we have. I'm glad to be the Festus in this festive time to your Jesse.
You could have told me I needed to get a ring bell or something.
Oh, it's so offensive. I'm not doing that. It's too offensive. The old WWE, man.
Underrated comedy tag team, though. And Luke Gallows, great work.
Yeah, I love. Oh yeah, yeah. I really want Karl Anderson to get that big singles push like he had in New Japan, but I'm gonna feel bad because Karl Anderson and Luke Gallows are so perfect together.
I will say though, we started with this sort of festive theme. Of course, it is December, so we thought we're not too sure whether or not we're going to be able to get an end of year show done. So we thought we would make this one sort of our big festive event. We did tell ourselves, hey, let's try and dress up for it and, try and make us feel like Christmassy, get the mistletoe in, whatever. Unfortunately, Joe, you didn't seem to get the memo.
Yeah, so it turns out I had a shirt with reindeers and Santa on them, quite garish is a word I've heard you use, and I'll use it too. But I was given a coconut water. Never had one. I tried it. Turns out it's awful. It's disgusting. I hated it. And I spilt it when I was pouring it out in the sink. I somehow spilt it on me in the anger of, But in good news, and I can show off how much weight I've lost. I do have.
Very nice.
Pants.
Very swish.
Yeah, I would have. I'm pretty flexible, so I could have just thrown the leg over, but
You would have attracted all the Alexa Grasso fans if you did that.
I'm not trying to get lumped in with that. She's leaned into it a bit, and I got to be honest, me and her are going to have a talk at dinner about it.
And for everyone who is joining us for the first time, please, we don't just all talk about random stuff outside of the main card. We are here to talk about mixed martial arts. It is the UFC 296 preview show, the final event of 2023. 2016, that was a long time ago. Final event of 2023. And on the whole, Joe, what do you think of the UFC during this year, over these past 12 months? Because I think it's been one which has been... On the one hand, we've had some big upsets, we've had some big dramatic moments, highlight reel knockouts, but I do feel like a lot of people were... I think they gave the UFC a little bit of a leash when it came to the quality of some of their cards, and I think the threshold was sort of broken a little bit, and people started thinking, hey, the PFL is now a serious contender, we don't want to keep getting these sort of random Apex cards with fighters ranked 10 to 15 on them, headlining.
Yeah, I feel like if I were to grade, as a dare I say professional reviewer, check out the retro review series, please. I would score the UFC as a whole maybe like a 6 out of 10 this year. I mean, we've had some great moments. I think the Volkanovski-Makhachev rivalry was a welcome surprise, even if I really don't like how that second fight went. Because of the short notice and everything. But that was a great moment. We had a lot of great upsets, like Sean Strickland being a UFC champion. If you told me that last year in December, I would have just laughed at you. But it's kind of funny too, because he was the last card last year. He was the last fight night, I think, last fight of 2022. And he was the first main event of 2023, if I remember correctly. It's just kind of funny. But it's this year, all the controversy, the Ngannou stuff,
USADA
stuff, John Jones just getting away with steroiding up. I feel like the negatives as history looks at this year, I feel like the negatives might sadly look at, history will look at the negatives overshadowing the positives of this year, which I hope not. But Because man, there was some stinkers of cards this year. We have the infamous "FU Canada" moment.
That got me a
But
lot of hate
I
on
mean,
Twitter.
it was funny. You didn't say it. UFC said it.
Speaking of Canada,
You
though,
know.
I do want to ask you about the next Canadian event because the last time that we spoke, the UFC hadn't formally announced what was going to headline that card. Not only have they done so for January, they've done it as well for February and for March. So we'll discuss these fights in a lot more detail when it comes to those preview shows. But your general consensus on the first three main events of 2024: Sean Strickland versus DDP, Volkanovski versus Tupuria, and Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera.
I really like. I'll go backwards. So Sean O'Malley, Cheeto Vera. I would. I always associate Cheeto Vera with L.A. Knight right
Yeah.
now. Yeah, blunt force trauma. Yeah. Nah. I think he's gonna look at that title reign of Sean O'Malley and go, nah. I could see him definitely getting that. That's a fun fight too, because I know there's the Sean O'Malley fans who say it was a fluke. Then there's the people who watch the fight and know what happened. I'm so sorry. That's why I laughed. I was like, oh, I felt mean. But no, in all seriousness, that fight's gonna be pretty good. Two hard-hitting strikers. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Topuria Volkanovski super interesting to me because Volkanovski just got KO'd and he's going up against a guy who has just oodles of power, oodles of promise, with a ceiling we don't know how high is yet, because he's just looked fantastic. So I'm genuinely really excited about that fight. And I don't know. I'm probably going to go back and forth on that because I hate counting out against Volkanovski, but I don't know with that. With Ilia Topuria, I don't know. Paddy Pimblett is lucky he got away without having to fight him, I'll say. And then, of course, Sean Strickland, DDP, opening up the main events for pay-per-view main events for 2024. And if I was Sean Strickland, I would highly suggest being careful on the jackhammer because he can turn it into a diamond cutter. Bang! I was watching OSW Halloween Havoc 98.
I love that spot. I do love that spot.
That's the best cutter of all time. I love the Evan Bourne Shooting Star Press one, but I love that jackhammer one because I think DDP had the best one. Anyways, I will say I think that fight is very interesting because the two main events in it, it's like very much that blue collar, people counted them out, rising up. You Karl talked about that, brought that up before we started talking. So I'm just stealing your lines here. I'm stealing your bits here. Nick Conning my way in. More wrestling. Knee slapper. But that said, I think it's really interesting that those two are, fighting for the title. That's kind of a crazy thing for me. And I'm expecting Sean Strickland to win. I think he's just a better fighter. But man, I don't know. I've said DDP's going to lose a lot of fights, and he was making me look stupid on the show. So I'm definitely excited for it. I'm definitely curious, I'll say.
And that we can all look forward to in the first 3 months of the year. For now, we're going to be turning our attention to next week's card, which is UFC 296, taking place in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. Now, the December show, when it comes to the UFC, is traditionally one of their strongest shows. I think when it comes to the books, I think the UFC maybe like to try and take a hit in the first sort of 3 months of the year and then really come on strong with that final sort of rally, that final quarter. So we have like the Abu Dhabi card, Madison Square Garden, and often in December they like to try and stack up the show as well. Do you think that this card lives up to some of the previous December shows?
At the top of my head, in terms of name value, yes. In matchmaking quality, almost. Because there's one fight on this main card that I really don't like, but we're going to talk about later, sadly. But man, there's you got Cody Garbrandt on the prelims, that's twice now. So, they're being a little careful with him, but it's still crazy to me. Um, and like, Alonzo Minifield's always a ton of fun. He's fighting Dustin Jacoby. Like, oh, this card's pretty good top to bottom, I think. So I like it. The thing I always think about with December cards is you either have great fights or great moments, is what I always kind of like associate with December cards. Like, I think of December cards, I think of like recently in 2020, you had Kevin Holland KOing Jacare off his back, which is insanity. And then you had later on in the main event a fantastic, a fantastic flyweight fight. So, but then I also think of, sadly, was it in December, Amanda Nunes and your girl, Juliana?
That was
that
December the 11th.
Yeah, you remember.
Well, I blew out my knee on that day, so I'll never forget that day.
It's just insane. I love it.
Same day as Abu Dhabi 2021. So for sport-wise, that day was just manic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of we probably weren't the only knee blown out that day. Think that's kind of crazy to think about. You blew your knee out along with probably a couple other athletes. Yes. That's as much as I go, wow, that happened. Wine Mom Boxing for the win, I guess. That's still a crazy moment. Then I always think of December
with Pride,
because this is okay. Oh yeah, well I always think of like New Year's Eve, like Pride. I wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah, Pride had the lock on December. That New Year's kind of shows that Japan loves to throw, and like Wrestle Kingdom, New Japan. Oh, Japan loves their calendars flipping over. But I always think, because this is what I think of December cards. I think of Alistair Overeem head being launched back to Holland by Francis Ngannou, because that KO I just can't escape. Like on YouTube, I see it. I'm like, well, I'm clicking on it. I love that punch. I weirdly associate that, even though it's more recent and I've been watching for years, I always kind of associate that with December cards. So for me, December, like, I never think of the names. I just think of, like, afterwards, like the moments that happen in December. It's just kind of weird how it falls into place like that, but I'm here for it.
And stay tuned to the main channel. There may be more Overeem related content coming out later this year. You almost read my mind, Joe.
Mm-hmm. We're going to review his horse meat diet. me and Karl recently started it, and I got to tell you, these results are looking fantastic.
So we'll focus on the prelims in a little bit more detail. You can see those on your screen right now. And the first fight we're going to be talking about is one that came together on quite short notice. So, Josh Emmett, our number 6 seed in the featherweight division, he was set to face Giga Chikadze, which I think could have been a fantastic battle. That brute strength of Josh Emmett going up against the technical striking of Chikadze. Unfortunately, Giga had to pull out, but taking his place, in my opinion, a very good substitution. Bryce Mitchell stepping in on short notice, so a different dynamic for Josh Emmett, a big opportunity for Bryce Mitchell to maybe get into the top 6.
I think that's a scarier guy on a full camp, admittingly. Like, I'm probably a little crazy here in this opinion, because I feel like I'm kind of tarnished on Giga after that Calvin Kattar fight, which I think a lot of people probably are, but which isn't necessarily fair. He took a year off to kind of heal up and kind of recover mentally and physically from that fight. But man, Bryce Mitchell, like, yeah, he's weird, and he openly talked about retiring when Topuria beat him, but Topuria's fighting for a title, like, who Topuria is the man, it turns out. So there's not too much shame in losing to him, I feel like. I think Bryce Mitchell's scary. One, because he's going to walk out with that Bible. Probably. That was so funny. As a Christian man, I was cackling, laughing. So funny to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting. I think it's a really rough on Josh Emmett, because he was preparing for a southpaw striker with kicks, learning how to deal with that, and now he's got a guy that, if they go to the ground and Bryce Mitchell ends up on top, it's probably in a bad spot if Bryce Mitchell wins a scramble and ends up on top now. So it's a lot that leads to a very interesting fight. I just really hope the short notice doesn't hurt the quality of this matchup.
I'm in the same boat as well, and I see this being a bad matchup for Josh Emmett as well. I think that if this was Josh Emmett from, say, 3 or 4 years ago, I'd lean towards him because he does have that grappling base and we know that he can crack a punch. But he's 39 now. I think some of that athleticism has maybe gone. He took a big beating up against Tupovia, so I am leaning more towards Bryce Mitchell for that one, I have to say.
Yeah. And weight cuts are harder for him nowadays.
Yes.
You saw what he looked like. Was it for Yair? Where he looked like I mean this with all the respect in the world. He looked like a goblin in the fight week. Like my best friend was calling him his. My best friend likes Josh Emmett. He goes, "Oh, my little goblin's fighting." Like I just can't unsee it. Yeah, like weight cuts get hard when you get older. And he was a wrestler, so he's been doing it for a long time. That's not great for your body. And I really hope he's okay physically with the weight cut, admittingly.
Other fights that we'll talk about on the prelims here, you were touched on it earlier on. Cody Garbrandt back in action, and arguably, is this last chance saloon for Cody? Yes, he got that win over Trevin Jones, but I don't think that Trevin Jones is maybe UFC caliber. And Cody, even though he won like a comfortable decision, he didn't blow Trevin Jones out the water.
Like he probably should have, admittingly. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one because I like Brian Kelleher a lot. He's really fun. And I'm not a Cody Garbrandt fan, admittingly. He's the most unintentionally hilarious fighter that's ever fought in UFC history. I don't know. I could see it if he loses and gets finished, or even if he loses a decision and he doesn't look great, like he looks a little behind, it's probably over. You know, I can definitely get behind that idea. One thing for me is Kelleher has KO power, but he's much more of a grappling threat. Yeah. I wonder if that's in his favor. Because Cody Garbrandt's obviously been working on getting his footwork going again. He doesn't have the head movement like he used to have, which, Lord, do I miss. But I could see him frustrating Kelleher on the feet, admittingly, and I am picking him to win. But I just thought of something. One thing interesting to me is Cody Garbrandt. He's a Paddy Pimblett fan. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Paddy Pimblett fan, and he talked about how he liked Paddy Pimblett because he said he thought Paddy Pimblett said that Paddy Pimblett was a sorcerer. Sorcerers can't be knocked out. That's a real thing. Cody Garbrandt said, and I have it on good faith that Cody Garbrandt has been Googling avidly into how to become a sorcerer. So, I love that so much, that clip of him going, he says he's a sorcerer, he can't get knocked out. Once again, I nominate Cody Garbrandt as the funniest fighter in MMA history. Unintentionally. He just wins, Yeah. He once ratted out that all of Team Alpha Male does steroids. He's the funniest of all time. I love it.
Anything else that stands out for you on the prelims?
Irene Aldana, trying to bounce back after a very disappointing performance. There's Casey O'Neill, who, marketable.
Yeah, she needs I think
this.
she's in an interesting position here because, yes, we saw with the Jennifer Maia fight that was maybe a jump too high for Casey O'Neill, but I think Ariane Lipski's maybe a jump too far back. So I think there's more of a middle ground that she needs. Like Casey should be fighting someone like a Lauren Murphy, for example.
I think so too. Yeah, I think she needs this. I think if she gets upset again, so the hype's gone. But the Maia fight was definitely too much of a jump for her. The fight I'm picking, there's two others on here I can touch on.
I've got a feeling I know which one you're going to be choosing.
Yeah, well, first, the unexciting one is Randy Brown, Muslim Salikov. And I'm saying uninteresting because Salikov is incredibly boring, but pretty good. Randy Brown is pretty entertaining sometimes, and he's super underrated. So I always like a good Randy Brown fight. But the one that sounds like just like if I have a fight of the night prediction, but this is my runner up for it. This is Alonzo Menifield and Dustin Jacoby. Sounds like a monster of a fight. Like, I am going to wake up early that day and be sure to watch this fight live. I'm not missing this one because those guys have power. Minifield can take it to the ground, which I kind of expect him to try and do, but if Jacoby keeps his fight on the feet, he's a good striker, and he's got power and a very varied arsenal. Oh, it could be a slugfest of a kickboxing match that I need it in my life. I love a good violent prelim fight, and this is probably it.
Yeah, Menifield's been on my he's not in my boys' stable, but he's always been on that radar ever since the first Jimmy Crude fight.
Yeah. I think he's looking for a window currently into your boy and breakfast.
Well, I think I am looking for a light heavyweight because Paul Craig's now a middleweight, so he's taken up that role. So technically, Menifield might just squeeze himself in there.
Is this a battle of our boys then? Because Jacoby's one of mine.
Yeah, I think you can count it that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a battle of the boys, dude. Oh my! Oh me meow. You know. Like that's actually kind of fun. Well, actually, no. Nikita Krylov is my boy at 205 because he's never winning a title, but I have fun with him.
So, with the prelims out the way, let us turn our attention to the main card and to a welterweight bout. It is Vicente Luque who is taking on Ian Garry, number 9 versus number 10. The betting odds for this one, you can get Garry in at minus 360. Luque comes in at plus 285. And I have to say, Joe, on a fight card that has Colby Covington and Paddy Pimblett, you can make an argument that the big enemy of the MMA fan base coming into 296 is Ian Garry.
Absolutely, he is. If he's very much a McGregor clone in the idea that like he's an Irish fighter, of course, and he's inspired by McGregor 10,000 times infinity. Understandable, right? But he just like copies his mannerisms to the point where it's kind of cringy. Copies like his movements, his taunts, and like his victory poses even after a finish. It's quite annoying and just when you see it. That and he is a massive trash talker. He kind of hits a little below the belt. I won't comment on the Neal Magny one because I'm not a professional in that kind of thing. I'm not a father, so I don't really know. But I will say, I don't like the printing of the shirts with the mugshot of Jeff Neal. I think that's pretty messed up. Admittingly, I feel like you're hitting a little bit below the belt there, and I don't even know necessarily what the charge was for. That said, admittingly, so maybe not. Because weirdly enough, maybe I'm just a hypocrite. I think it'd be kind of funny if like Tom Aspinall did that to John Jones. Regardless, he just comes across unlikable. He kind of got a little bit made fun of by Sean Strickland. Won't be commenting on the contents of that to keep it PG. I don't want to have to explain that whole mess, but he threatened to sue him, which is like, I don't know. When you're a fighter, and naturally your instinct is, oh, he's gonna threaten him, and talk trash back, try to, macho man it through, even though that's probably not the most productive way in like how society works. But threatening to sue him was very, it really hurt his reputation.
When you said macho man through it, I was just picturing him with his wife. Stay away from Elizabeth.
I almost said something horrible. I'm trying so hard. I want to stress. I'm trying so hard not to make fun of Ian Garry's marital situation because that feels a little low for me.
Yeah. Two single
I
losers
almost had
complaining about somebody who's married.
yeah, married to an attractive woman in her 40s that has a book on trying to get a young athlete. Um, honestly, hey, you know what? If I was a young athlete, I wouldn't mind an older woman. So props on him.
And then on top of that, you've also got the stuff with apparently with the training camps, because this is two guys who both work together at Killcliff. One of them had to go elsewhere, and Gary and Killcliff, I should say, chose to work with Luke here for this one. Gary had to go elsewhere. And then Renegade, who is Leon Edwards' gym, also said, we don't want any part of him. So there's a lot of stories going around about what kind of sparring partner Ian Gary is. It's a lot of stuff on a young man's shoulders. I mean, this is a guy who's still 26 years old, and he feels like the sport's biggest villain right now.
Oh yeah, I think even after all the stuff I've said, I can understand him having fans and people defending him. I totally get it, but I think it's really hard to defend a guy who is I gotta stop fidgeting with things. I blame all the extra inner caffeine from a ruined my sleep schedule during my vacation.
It's like Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, like just like no, you can put them down. As long as no knife goes in my leg, I'm content. I think though, like once you kind of, even though we talk about this every once in a while, it's a one-on-one sport, but there's a team, and I think once you kind of betray your team, I think it's infighting in the gym is okay to an extent, as long as you guys both agree to it and are okay with it before the bout agreement and before all the talk on Twitter and stuff like that. I'm okay with that. If two consenting adults agree to fist fight each other. But for me, like when you're getting kicked out of gyms, and all this stuff, it just really rubs people the wrong way, understandably so. And it just makes you so unlikable. I gotta be honest. And my word, is this guy unlikable? It's almost like it feels like a constant effort to become the most unlikable guy in the UFC. And Colby Covington used to spoil Star Wars on Twitter, which is funny. I not a Star Wars fan. I've watched a lot of the movies. I grew up watching it. Not so much anymore, but man, that is hilariously heel heat. I love it from Colby Covington on that move.
And the thing it's made people do with Ian Gary as well is this seems to be the only thing that people are talking about when it comes to this man. Yet, we've got a guy who's 13-0, 6-0 so far in the UFC. There's been like a slow, gradual progression in the amount of the quality of the opponents he's been facing. And he comes into the fight off two of his best wins of his career so far. Daniel Rodriguez, who he just blew away in that fight. I'm not a big Ian Gary fan, but I was really impressed by how easily he got rid of D-Rod. And then dominates Neal Magny. And I know there was a lot of unpleasantness before and after the fight. To me, the Neal Magny fight sums up Ian Gary to a T. Because we have this very talented performer who undoes everything by being a prick.
It's incredibly well said, honestly. We mentioned heel heat being the villain. We always talk about the parallels between mixed martial arts and professional wrestling. He's developing X-Pac heat.
Yeah.
Like Roman Reigns level 20 or circa 2016 levels heat, and it's just, oh man, like people are genuinely excited to see him at that press conference and hope Sean Strickland shows up. Like that's hilarious to me.
So you can play a heel in this sport, but you've got to have a lot of charisma to pull it off. Like Chael could pull it off. Conor,
best heel
pre-Mayweather McGregor could pull it off. Ian Gary just doesn't have that. And neither does Colby. No. We'll talk about him later on in the show.
Patty, nope, don't have it. But I mean, honestly, A+ for effort. That's one thing too, though, with Ian Gary is I legitimately don't know if he's playing a character and he's just a douche in real life. Like, is he? I don't know. He kind of blurs that line a little bit for me, and I think that's one of the reasons where it's like, should I even point and laugh at this kid? I don't know. But This fight should be pretty good, though.
It should do. And the man charged with trying to stop the Ian Gary hype train is Vicente Luque. 22-9 record. He bounced back to winning ways with a victory over Rafael dos Anjos earlier on in the year, which was one of those sort of apex events. We sort of touched on this earlier on in the show. Do you remember anything about that fight or that card?
No, I had to rewatch it and rewatch my recap. It was weird. It was legit. I had Khalil Roundtree fought on it. Pauliana Viana lost. But yeah, I had to rewatch it because I legitimately was like, oh, last fight was the Jeff Neal one, right? And I was like, oh, I covered this card. Yes, UFC in 2023 sometimes, I guess. But superstar finisher, this guy.
Yes, certainly so. And also has quite an impressive portfolio of scalps. Rafael dos Anjos, Michael Chiesa, Tyron Woodley, admittedly a Tyron Woodley who was past his prime. And also you got names like Randy Brown, 2 wins over Nico Price, the king of bare knuckle, Mike Perry, Jalen Turner, which was Jalen Turner's UFC debut, fighting at Turner's, in my opinion, Turner's ideal weight class of welterweight. How he gets down to lightweight, I do not know.
I don't understand either.
Brian Barberena in one of the most underrated fights of all time. If you haven't seen it, please check out Luque versus Barberena. And also beat Bilal Muhammad at the Madison Square Garden card.
Yeah. And as far as I'm concerned, they only fought once. Because I forgot the second fight.
Not great.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
But for everything that Luque has done and all of the big wins he's had in his career, the big cloud that hangs over him going into this one is what happened against Jeff Neal. Now, this was a guy who, in Luque, who was always known for his durability. It was a big factor in how he was able to put together so many big wins. The Jeff Neal fights happened, and I want to stress, Jeff Neal can pack a punch. I think he is criminally underrated. But Luque suffers a knockout. He speaks about how, I think he suffered like a brain bleed or something like that.
Brain bleed? It was a brain bleed, wasn't it? Yeah.
And there was a lot of people legitimately thinking he's putting his long-term health at risk by coming back to fight RDA. And I don't think that worry has left people's heads even after the RDA win.
No, it legitimately hasn't for me. I think if Ian Gary's gonna fight, the UFC does this. We talk about this for their little pet projects. They like to give them certain matchups with certain people at certain times. This is a great time for Ian Gary to fight Luque.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
It is. So you've studied Ian Gary's career so far in the UFC. You've sort of got a read on some of his attributes. What do you think are sort of his biggest strengths and weaknesses?
Man, he can crack. And he's a great striker, honestly. Despite the Machado name, I'm not overly impressed with his grappling. But with a weapon that I'm probably going to bring up in my in my prediction for this is the low kick. He showed off against Neil Magny, was fantastic. He had the head kick win over D-Rod, so he won his UFC debut with a first round punch, KO with from a knockout from a punch. So he definitely has power in his legs, in his hands. He can definitely, he knows how to put the shot on the chin pretty well. His anti-wrestling against the fence is not bad. He definitely can stuff a good amount of takedowns. But for me, I think one thing I will bring up is he kind of tall guys defenses.
Yes.
A little bit. Yeah, he kind of does the lean back with the chin a little bit up. And that's a fear. He's in his I think it was Jordan Williams, if I remember correctly.
Jordan Williams caught him, and then I think Song Kenan, he proper belted him.
Yeah, and he's young. He's gonna have a good chin. He's unbeaten. He hasn't gone through these wars, so he's gonna be pretty durable. And he took those shots well. He moved, and so we know he has the cardio because he was able to take those shots well. But Lord, did those shots like really stun him. And he can be caught at times because the tall guy defense. It, to quote another Will Ferrell movie, it's like Sex Panther. It works 66% of the time, all the time. And and Luke is a vet who knows how to fight against guys with tall guy defense, like Jalen Turner.
Yes.
Tall guy defensed him.
Randy Brown to an extent.
Randy Brown can tall guy Randy Brown tall guy defensed JDM. That's how he got caught. And so he understands the idea of hitting a guy with tall guy defense. And they used to be, you know, not I don't know, I don't want to say sparring partners, because you could be in a gym with a guy and never spar with him. It could be just that weird kind of thing. Maybe you don't want to spar with a guy because of, you know, Ian Gary has a rep potentially for being a douche in sparring. So maybe, you know, he really didn't all that much. But for argument's sake, let's say they did. He probably knows how to put it on him.
Yes.
And they probably, and vice versa. So it's definitely interesting when two former teammates fight. It's an interesting fight. I wish the whole brain bleed thing wasn't still lingering over this fight. I think I'm really curious how Luque is going to handle the low kicks of Ian Gary. I think Gary's kicks are going to be an advantage here because Luque is much more of a boxer. He's going to step in with, like, he kind of has a squared stance to defend against the kicks, but he's going to box primarily with an occasional knee or elbow, and he's got a great knee. Mike Perry's face after getting his nose flattened is unbelievable.
That was the... I'm right in saying that was that the Uruguay card?
I think so, yeah. And because he flattened his nose, and there's a picture of Mike Perry just... It's one of my favorite pictures in MMA history. It's an interesting fight. Like, if we take the brain bleed out of it, you know, it's a really interesting fight. Because for Ian Gary, that first fight really kind of tapered a lot of our expectations of him, but he has shown pretty good promise in these last two fights. So this is a decent little litmus test for him, I think.
One of the things I'm interested to see when it comes to Ian Gary is, I think a big reason for Ian Gary's success is his footwork and how he sort of adjusts positionally. You mentioned how he likes to sort of like stay on the outside, sort of lean up against the fence just to make sure that there's no takedown threat coming his way. I think when you have that kind of fighting style, one of the best ways to sort of neutralize that is to sort of crowd him. Sort of in the same way we sort of seen with Wonderboy recently. We saw with Bilal and Gilbert Burns. He just crowded Wonderboy and just didn't let him have the space to sort of get his kicks and his striking going. Vicente Luque has a striking style perfect for crowding someone like an Ian Gary.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic ring cutter.
Yes.
Yeah. That actually gave me a dream fight. Imagine in his prime Matt Brown versus Ian Gary.
Ooh.
Like, because in his prime, Matt Brown is probably the best ring cutter in MMA I've ever seen. At least in, like, the normal, I feel bad saying this, the normal human being size weight classes. That's so rude. If I was in shape, I would be a bantamweight. So, I mean, I make fun of myself here. But Luque's a pretty good, because he'll use the left hook or like a body kick or high kick with his for the right side to kind of cut the cage off, which is fantastic because you can't move through like a person's limb, you know. So I'm pretty interested. That's actually a pretty good point because he is a fantastic ring cutter, and Ian Gary loves to kind of, you know, straddle the sides of the, you know, circle around a lot.
Another interesting stat when it comes to Luque, and it'll probably be our final point before we make our predictions. As things stand, Vicente Luque has a record of 0.64% takedowns during a fight. Bearing in mind that many people think Ian Gary is going to have the striking advantage, and Luque has submission wins on his record, is that something he should maybe try to correct?
I wouldn't be surprised if he got the fight to the ground. I think he cinches in a Darce and wins, admittingly, because he has a very good
Very.
ground game
And a very good dart.
Yeah. Oh yeah, his fight with Chiesa is like it's only like a minute and a half long, but for a minute, it is one of the most exciting fights I've ever seen.
And a lot of people were really high on Michael Chiesa going into that one. He was having a bit of like a mini revival.
Yeah, yeah. At welterweight, he looked fantastic, I thought, and I think the Luque loss and then the Sean Brady one kind of rattled him a bit. The Luque one especially.
So put your money where your mouth is with this one. Who is going to pick up the win?
I'm willing to be wrong here, and this is 100%. No, maybe not 100%. 40% my bias, but I'm picking Luque to win. I think by Darce. I think I could see him cutting the cage off, hurting him, and then not KOing him because we know he has a good chin. Ian Gary, he can take a shot, but we've seen him caught before. And with a guy like Luque, you just need to smell blood in the water for him to have that. Excuse me. That finishing instinct to get the finish there, and I think I could see a Darce choke win. If not, Ian Gary's gonna kick him up until getting a decision or a finish, Neil Magny styles.
The Luque of 2018, 2019, I think would take this one. The 2023 version of Vicente Luque, I hate to say this because I do like the guy. I think Gary's gonna finish him.
Yeah, I'm openly saying I think that's my bias. I think this fight's a little closer. Sadly, I think the brain bleed's going to be an effect. I'm really worried for his health. He says he's fine. Docs are saying he's fine. He's getting cleared for fights. But it's the long term I'm afraid of.
Speaking of fighters we fear for the long term, I hate to bring this one up. I think everybody who's watching this show, everybody who's going to be watching 296, deep down I think they're dreading this one. It's Tony Ferguson taking on Paddy Pimblett in a lightweight encounter. And Pimblett, a minus 340 favourite. You can get Ferguson in at plus 270. Now, we have to be honest with this one, Joe. Are the UFC putting Tony Ferguson out to pasture?
Yep, absolutely.
And
I think this is a revenge for the Dana White privilege line.
do you think he holds that back, or do you think that's a joke?
A little bit of both. Yeah, Dana White, admittingly, I think he laughed in the moment, and I think, imagine his friend going he got you good with that Dana White privilege line. Yeah, he did. Where's that picture of him in that Mexican restaurant just, every time I see that picture, I always think of the first time I saw it, and it was when it's January 1st and Tyron Woodley hasn't defended his belt all year.
I've always wondered, he's wearing a Huff t-shirt, HUF, and I've always wondered what that is.
I don't know. My brain always thinks Huffington Post, but I know that's not it. Oh, man. I love that picture.
With that being said, I think we're both in agreement that the concept of Tony Ferguson fighting is not something that pleases us. This guy took severe damage up against Justin Gaethje. And every fight that we've seen since then has just made us realise just how, the Nate Diaz one was the one that really highlighted just how washed Tony Ferguson is.
Yeah.
But if Tony Ferguson is going to keep fighting, now this is one of my hot takes. Tony Ferguson shouldn't be fighting, I want to stress that. But if Tony Ferguson is going to continue fighting, I would much rather he do it in the UFC with all of their health and safety practices, rather than what I fear could happen, which is Tony leave the promotion and end up like Bigfoot fighting in these random sort of Lithuanian shows, getting beaten by some 5-20 journeymen.
Yeah, it's. I'm in the similar boat. For me, I fear Bellator snagging him, or
PFL
PFL. Yeah, PFL-ator. That's a great name. Because I feel like pre-Bellator buyout, who knows when PFL gets them their matchmaking gets fixed, but I could see them going okay, we got Tony Ferguson fighting. You're gonna fight one of the Pitbull brothers. Don't do that. What? Are you just doing this so you can say you had a former UFC champion beaten by your Bellator guy. Like, um, I don't understand why Tony's fighting Pimblett of all people. Like, if he is fighting, he should be fighting a guy. You know,
I think that
I don't know.
what they should be doing
Jim
with
Miller?
Tony is you just said the same guy there. They should be treating him the same way they treat their other sort of like grizzled vets, people like the Jim Millers, the Clay Guidas, the Matt Browns of the world.
Mm-hmm. Jim Miller should have been in this fight. Gotta be honest.
Yeah, and I'd fancy Jim Miller to beat Tony, to be honest.
I think it should be Jim. Yeah, I would too. I think Jim Miller should be fighting Paddy. Honestly.
That would be hell of and that would be a really good litmus test for how good Paddy is. Just going to focus on Paddy a little bit here because we need to sort of like dissect the match. This is going to be Paddy Pimblett's first fight since the Jared Gordon fight, which ironically enough was the core main event of the last December show, UFC 282. So it's been a year's absence for Paddy. Has absence sort of made, I wouldn't say made the heart grow fonder, but the guy had a lot of venom and a lot of vitriol after that fight. And I think that sort of died off a little bit. I wouldn't say he's a fan favourite again, but if people say I dislike Paddy Pimblett, I think they're going to struggle to sort of like remind people as to why.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, when people say they dislike Paddy Pimblett, it's probably like the attitude, of it all. Like, he's a very cocky guy, and you need to have that confidence, I think, as a fighter. I personally think you need to have that kind of confidence as a fighter, especially if you're looking to be champion, But I think we all understand the ceiling he has.
Yes.
And he's acting like he has a Tom Aspinall ceiling, when, not really.
Do you know who Paddy reminds me of, to an extent, in terms of sort of like the way the UFC treat him, the sort of like the marketing around him? In some ways, he's kind of like, he's a bit like Kimbo, in that most fans could recognise that Kimbo had a very low ceiling. But Elite XC were very smart in trying to give him certain opponents to just sort of keep that hype train going a little bit. Like not so much say like Kimbo Slice is a mega star and he's going to be like UFC champion or anything like that, but to just ring that last little bit of hype around him as much as they possibly could. Paddy, in my opinion, is in that same sort of bracket. I think the UFC know he's not the greatest, but they'll just sort of like try and just keep it going as long as they possibly can.
There's a reason. In my brain, there's a reason they're not giving him Jim Miller. There's a reason they're not giving him Drew Dober or Matt Frivola when they could have, or Terrence McKinney when they could have.
Oh, that one, McKinney would blow Paddy away.
Oh, it's over. Yeah. Like, I don't think it gets to round 2. If Paddy makes it to round 2, he wins. But it's not going to round 2. Like, I don't think. I don't care how much of a sorcerer Pimblett is. He is not making it to round 2 intact. There's a reason they gave him Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon recently TKO'd Marco Madsen, but it was much more of an attrition style KO, like finish. It wasn't like a crack, of a shot. They gave him Jared Gordon. If Jared Gordon had any ounce of power, he would have flattened Paddy Pimblett in their fight, because when he hits him, he's hitting him clean on the chin with picture-perfect counters that Paddy literally, at one point, I think he got hit with a left hook where his eyes were closed in the striking. Gordon would have planted. If Gordon had power like Jim Miller, it's over. Like, he is stiffened. He is Nate quarried up. Rich Franklin style.
One of the most brutal knockouts of all time, if you've never seen it.
Hard to watch, but the sick part of me wishes Rich Franklin fist bumped him. Yeah, I would say that with Terry Edom, but Terry Edom had a legitimately horrible tragedy afterwards. And that joke is normally for Terry Edom after the Barboza one, but the Nate Marquardt one, Nate Quarry one with Rich Franklin, I think that one's pretty good because his hands are just ready to go. You can just kind of give him a good old fist bump.
Is Quarry one of the people in that class action lawsuit? I think it's him, Kung Lee, and Fitch.
Yeah. I've seen that KO recently pop up on YouTube, so I feel like he has to be.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I think that's a legitimate thing.
Like,
But,
imagine if John Fitch of all people fundamentally changes UFC contracts forever. Like, one of the most notoriously boring fighters of all time is one of the most important.
It's so funny. John, there's a picture on my phone I have of John Fitch saying, I just got done watching all the Lord of the Rings movies and they were super boring. And some guy commented saying, it's kind of like watching a 9-hour John Fitch fight, right? And I'm like, dude, you killed him. Like I had the Simpsons, stop, he's already dead. And like my head, you murdered him with a reply. But Paddy definitely rubs people the wrong way. And I wonder if it would change if he got a haircut, is one of my notes I have.
But he
definitely showed you how sad I was writing these.
But
notes,
he wouldn't look at the one heart.
Oh,
we've got to keep that.
Oh,
see,
no.
Paddy would, in my opinion, win a lot of favour with me if he, like, let's just say he wins like the really controversial split decision again, and he jumps up and goes, "Yes, I did it all by myself."
Well, here's my pitch. Bruce Pimblett goes out.
I like where this is going. Brown shirt and leather trousers.
Yeah, Bruce Pimblett thinks it should be about him. Whereas Stu Pimblett is just like,
stretch him.
Yeah, stretch him. And Martha Pimblett is just taking a loan out on her teeth. As Bobby Heenan was perfect. Rest in peace.
So we'll try and focus on the fight itself here. So we've talked about some of the negatives regarding Paddy in terms of his personality, and the big one, which is his striking defense. I actually think the quality of Paddy's hands isn't bad. At least it's a lot better than it was, say, back in Cage Warriors. It's definitely an area which he's improved on. It's the striking defense.
Yeah. He tall guys it too. He tall guys it. But he's also like, he loves being aggressive, which I totally understand, and I find it not endearing. That feels condescending. Admirable. I find it very cool, like when a fighter is very aggressive. But he's throwing hooks like, like in his debut, he got clobbered. By throwing a hook from here with his chin super high up in the air. And he kind of does, like, sometimes he throws hooks like that, I will say, but for the most part, he's a little tighter. He's gotten tighter in his hands as time moves on. He just gets hit all the time.
Yes.
By Jared Gordon threw the Bugs Bunny slow ball punch at him and clobbered him. So... you see that and you go, yeah, maybe it's a good thing for your health you didn't fight Jared Dober. That said, he's actually a pretty good grappler.
I think to beat Jordan Levitt in a grappling match, you've got to have something about you.
Yeah, he beat the Monkey King in a grappling match, which is fantastic. That's a super good feather in his cap. Is Jordan Levitt a great MMA fighter? No, but he is a great grappler. And he,
Yeah. So if you are a Tony Ferguson fan who is clinging on to any kind of last hope of him sort of rolling back the years against the odds and getting that sort of big win before riding off into the sunset, that sort of big fairy tale ending that I think a lot of El Kukui fans want, how's he going to do it?
Probably cracking him, admittingly, because he still has oomph a little bit. In the Chandler fight, he dropped Chandler pretty hard with a left straight. If I remember correctly, it was a left straight.
I think it was a left straight, yeah.
Yeah, and he can crack him. Like, he can still hit, because Tony Ferguson didn't have like one punch KO power. He could if he caught you, but he wasn't like a Gaethje or not even a Poirier. It was much more attrition. He's gonna just like, there's that fantastic picture of the before and after of fighting Tony Ferguson. That's just like if you want to talk, like, I've talked about like hidden hammers. Tony Ferguson is way too popular to ever be a hidden hammer, but like Matt Brown, I am nominating him as a first ballot Hall of Fame violence guy. Like the king, him and Matt Brown are probably, and Robbie Lawler, probably like the three they're on that Mount Rushmore of pure violence.
The one that always sticks from my mind when it comes to Tony, and that's sort of like attritional striking, is the cowboy fight.
Oh,
because if you actually go back and watch that fight, which I think is very underrated, by the way, not a lot of people remember that one.
it's fantastic.
The first round is quite close between the two, and then just the accumulation of shots start building up. It's constant volume, and you eventually see it by the end of the second round, just the state of Cowboy's face. So you've got these shots, they're not power punches, but it's the accumulation, and they eventually just build up.
It's like, and before he even blows his nose.
Yeah.
Because I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 on the Retro Review series when I covered it. Plug.
When we need the plugs, no one watches them.
We're on the second channel now, by the way, guys. Right here on this channel. And trust me, if you watch it, you're just going to watch them all because I'm pretty awesome. It's a lot harder to say when you're, when you're doing it here. It's easy to say when I'm reading the script. But I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 with the only like fault being the, blowing his nose. But before he blows his nose, he is jacked up. Like, he is a mess before he blows that nose. Then he blows it, and it's like, oh my god, is this the thing 1982? Like, what is this? But I think he can crack him still. Weirdly enough, as technical of a grappler as he is, I think we talked about it before the show. I think Tony Ferguson's downfall was age, because he loses his athleticism, which really helped his style out tremendously. But the moment that does it is when he cut weight twice to prove a point to Justin Gaethje. And then he went out there. The first 2 rounds of that fight are unbelievably competitive, and they're awesome fight. It's one of the best fights ever, I personally think. But it's hard to watch because those first 2 rounds are great. Then, we get to round 3, then round 4, and round 5, and it's just like, why am I watching this? Like, I feel a little sickened. I always blush about how much I love violence and all that. It's a little hard to watch, admitting. It's like watching Logan, or like Stand By Me, like one of these like really sad, Marley and Me, all these like horribly sad good movies. It's like, oh, what am I doing this to myself? Little fun fact about me: I can't watch Logan or my favorite movie of all time, In Bruges, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 without crying like a small child for my room for like 30 seconds, while like in the fetal position.
Word of advice: do not watch The Champ.
You've recommended it to me. I probably will one day.
I was bawling watching The Champ.
Oh man, for me, we both played Red Dead 2, Red Dead 1 and 2.
Arthur's Last Ride.
Yeah.
Oh.
For me, if you're gonna get me a dad story, because I lost my dad as my hero, but then a brother story is really gonna hit home for me, because I'm very close to my brother who's 7 years younger than me. So Red Dead 2 with like the brother storyline it tells, it just my heart. But it's a little hard. I think the build up to the Gaethje fight and then the Gaethje fight damage he took just did it. It was like that straw that hit the camel's back. It was the left hook from Rampage kind of thing, like Chuck Liddell. Like that shot, Chuck never had a great chin, but that shot seemed to just speed things up 20 years.
That or the Rashad knockout.
Oh, yeah, that one's... Well, he lost to Keith Jardine. Did he get a win after?
He beat Vanderlei.
Oh, yeah, in a classic. Yeah, that's a fantastic fight. But maybe it was the Rashad fight. That shot is... Ugh. But I think if Tony does do it, if he were to do it, and make me the happiest man in the world, I want to stress, I talk about my love of women on the show quite often. If Alexa, if the miracle happens and I propose to Alexa Grasso or Io Shirai or my number one honest outside of sports is Ana de Armas, and they said yes, right? In those hypothetical situations, I would be the second happiest I could be. Because if Tony Ferguson starches Paddy Pimblett, I think that might top it in the moment, you know? In the moment, that might top it.
Yeah.
I don't think he will. I am picking Paddy, sadly. But if he does do it, he's going to crack him and maybe submit him. But I do feel like even on the ground, it's kind of lost it.
Yeah, that's a concern as well, because you can maybe say that even if Tony isn't as fast or as sort of like durable as he was, he could always fall back on the grappling. But we've seen Bobby Green neutralise him there. We've seen Charles Oliveira do the same thing. Benny did it as well. So
Yeah.
I don't think Tony. I just think the physicality's gone. The big things that helped Tony Ferguson during his career were his unpredictability, his pace, and his durability. I don't think he's got any of them left.
Who am I to say to tell an absolute legend and a guy I personally believe in terms of pure ability? In terms of pure ability, he might be at least one or two greatest lightweight ever. Because him and Prime BJ and Prime Tony,
Yes.
it has in my brain. I was a Habib fan during his run. At post retirement, not so much honestly, but he was great. Prime Tony Ferguson, Prime BJ Penn, just like in terms of ability, just I don't know if anyone beats those guys. Who am I to tell a legend like that? That you shouldn't be fighting. But man, I if he loses, I genuinely hope he calls it.
Same here. Because we don't want a big fault. We don't want a Penn.
Yeah. As much as we want to like kind of make it about ourselves and have the little, I had a joke in here, my notes saying, I don't want to talk about Tony Ferguson fights anymore. That it's kind of a little bit of a joke. I don't want to make it about myself. I want it to be about the health of this absolute legend. I don't want to see him go through this again.
Yeah. So we'll happily change the subject then, and we'll move on to fight number 3 on the card. Now, a welterweight encounter, the second of 3 welterweight counters which are happening on this one. I can see you're excited for this one, Joe. It's easy to see why. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, number 5 versus number 6. Shavkat, you can get a minus 520, so he's the biggest favourite on the card. Wonderboy comes in at plus 390. And so we'll talk about Shavkat Rakhmonov, because I think it's safe to say, Joe, if you're looking for a guy who has sort of become sort of like the hipster darling of the MMA community, I think Shavkat would be up there as maybe number 1 or number 2.
He's got to be. Has anyone else gotten close to him lately? Anyone you can think of? Aspinall was for a minute pre-Volkov, I thought.
Yeah.
But he lost it.
Yeah, for me to sort of like be a hipster darling, you've got to have something about you, but you can't be too sort of prominent in the fan base. Like once the like everyday fans know who you are, you've sort of lost that hipster cool.
Yeah, I think once Aspinall beat Volkov, I think he lost the hipster cool. I think he just became straight up cool.
Yep.
Yeah. This guy, it's got to be him though, right? Like he's 1 or 2. Maybe Diego Lopez, actually.
And Lopez would be a good call, actually.
Yeah, Diego Lopez actually is he's my rookie of the year,
Saint Denis, another call.
Yeah, he's great showing in his last fight. He's a blast and a half. Same card, actually. Man, it's probably those 3. I think Shavkat's got to take it though, because just
17 wins, 17 finishes, 8 KOs, 9 submissions.
That is a beautiful statistic. Like, that is melted butter. Like just perfect. right there. Oh, this guy's the man.
He's very good, very talented. And do you know what I think is one of the best things that he's done, is a lot of the time, like I've said this before online, like you follow my Twitter feed, I even made a comment about it a couple of days ago. I think that if you talk a big fight, it's good for marketing reasons and it pushes you to the front of the queue much quicker.
Yeah.
But it raises people's expectations to the extent that if you don't match them, if you don't blow your own trumpet, you are going to get a backlash for it. Hamzat, I think, is a big example of that.
Yeah.
Shavkat, he's done the exact opposite. He's just stayed quiet, kept himself to himself. He hasn't sort of made out, he hasn't been like calling out Leon Edwards and say, I'm going to smash you in one round or anything like that. He's just kept himself to himself. And because of that, you've got largely a fan base that seems to like the guy.
Yeah, he's really likable.
Yes.
And I've said it before on the show. I'm going to reiterate it. I think Hamzat Chimaev is a fantastic fighter. Shavkat is better. Flat out better. He's just a better fighter, I think.
Better all-rounder.
I think just better. I think if they fought, I think Shavkat finishes him.
Yeah.
I'm on this hype train. I'm probably conducting it at this point. And got my hat and everything, for it. This guy just reeks of, oh, you're champion, aren't you? You're going to be champion. Like, you just kind of get that feeling from a guy like this. And what a beautiful statistics he has. 8 KOs, 9 submissions. Oh.
So, it's interesting that you sort of like openly sort of bring up the fact that you're like this big sort of like Shavkat supporter. I think it's probably you're second behind Luke Thomas right now. What did you make of the Jeff Neal fight then? Because I think that was the first time that people saw, I wouldn't say weaknesses in his game, but like he was pushed by Jeff Neal at good points during that fight.
He looked human, and I thought he was winning on the cards decently. Maybe not, almost comfortably, I'd even say. But he looked human. He kind of learned not to tall guy defense. He made that adjustment because he got cracked doing the tall guy defense. Funny enough, as much as we talk about it. And he made the adjustments. He showed that he has the power to hurt a guy like Jeff Neal, who has a great chin. Hurt him, and he took some great shots from Jeff Neal, and we saw how durable he is. So he isn't just a glass cannon of finishing power. And when he cracked him, he hurt him, and he got him in one of the craziest neck cranks ever, and it just put him unconscious. It was utterly beautiful. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my fights of the year. It's not quite my fight of the year. I think I'm probably still leaning towards Volkanovski Makhachev 1. I think that's probably my fight of the year. But yeah, that's up there for me.
Yeah. Someone described Shavkat perfectly. He is a chisel rather than a sledgehammer.
The scalpel instead of the chainsaw.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah, I did have some concerns about his tall man defense, like you saw early on. I think Jeff Neal landed some big shots against him in that fight, so that is something which I do think is maybe a little bit of a concern. But as you mentioned before, very good at reading his opponents and adjusting mid-fight. And you also see, based on the record, obviously 8 KOs, 9 submissions, a fantastic all-rounder. So you can understand why there's so many people who are high on the guy.
Mm-hmm. He almost kind of like analyzes like what's his best way to beat you in that moment. Yeah. Because he's an all-arounder, and it's like, striking's not working out here. I'm just gonna take you down and choke you out. Yeah.
So we'll turn to his opponent now, which is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. No introduction needed with this guy. 17 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, which was that great fight against Tyron Woodley. The first one. Please do not watch the second.
There was a second one?
Not in my head, there wasn't.
No.
There was no third Chuck Tito fight.
Yeah, we got hit with this thing, right? The bring.
Like Men in Black.
Yeah. I love that. I love that joke.
I do find it interesting to see Wonderboy choose this fight, because what we've seen recently with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is bearing in mind he's 40 years old now, he has been a lot more selective with which fights he's taking. So obviously he took the Kevin Holland fight because he knew it was going to be striker versus striker. Same reason he took Michel Pereira, which was supposed to happen in 291. Unfortunately, that one fell through. But bearing in mind how good Shafkat is on the ground, are you surprised he's chosen, you know what, I'm going to take on this guy that everybody's afraid of?
Yeah, legitimately. For me, because I remember after the Belal Muhammad fight, he was like, "Can I stop fighting grapplers, please? Like, I'm old. I just kind of want to fight strikers." And he's like, and I was like, "You make a good point. I think, if you earn a title shot that way, sure. It's not like you're an up and coming guy that's getting favorable matchmaking. He's put in the work. He's put in the effort. I think he deserved it. And I wonder if like that Michel Pereira weird backlash he got from Dana White and like some fans made him go, you know what? How about this? How about I go KO your guy right now? I'm going to go beat your guy. He's too nice of a guy to think that. He probably went, well, I think I could probably beat that guy. Yeah, let's try to see if I can. Maybe people will be on my side again. He's way too nice of a guy. NMF, nicest mofo in the game.
Yeah, I do think there's maybe an element of that, because for anyone who maybe forgets, because this sport moves so quickly, I think a lot of people may have forgot what happened, but Thompson versus Pereira was supposed to happen at 291. Pereira missed weight, and Wonderboy was given the offer to stay on the card, and the fight proceeded as a catchweight. And Wonderboy, quite rightly so, said, you know what, I've made this effort to cut down to 170. My opponent didn't do so. I'm 40 years old. Why should I put myself at a disadvantage when I don't need to against somebody who doesn't have that same sort of professionalism as I did? Which I completely understand it from Wonderboy's perspective. It was disappointing to lose that fight from the card as a fan, but he's been a professional, and we shouldn't criticize somebody for making the sort of professional decision.
Yeah, I thought we oftentimes make fun of Dana White just doing his thing, but that was way out of line. I thought, they're just ragging on Wonderboy. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Wonderboy's a Hall of Famer?
Based on his UFC career, I wouldn't say so.
Really? Okay.
No, I think he's a very talented fighter. I think eventually it's going to get to the stage, because like you put 5 or 6 people in pretty much every year, so eventually he'll reach the stage where someone like a Wonderboy will come through. But I think there's other people I would put in before him. I think he's a fantastic fighter, very entertaining. But in my opinion, the people who should be in now are like the guys like the Frank Shamrocks of the world, or
he's never getting put in.
But it's that kind of ilk of fighter I should be putting in first. That doesn't take anything away from Wonderboy's abilities. Incredibly talented. But I think you need more. I would put more credentialed people in there first.
I have a fear and a prediction. I predict Dana White is going to put Jorge Masvidal in.
Oh, no.
Boy. Yeah. I thought about that this week, and I went, he's going to put in Masvidal before he puts in Wonderboy.
Honestly, Masvidal would be less deserving than Serra.
Yeah. I think Serra deserves it, legitimately. That's the biggest upset I've personally seen.
Someone made this comment, though, which, I'm not taking anything away from Matt Serra. Because obviously he became UFC champion, which I haven't even fought in MMA. But if you're putting Matt Serra in the Hall of Fame for winning the Ultimate Fighter and giving us one of the sport's biggest upsets, then Juliana Peña's Hall of Fame induction's right around the corner.
Sadly, I can agree with. Well, yeah, I can agree with that, because
she did the same thing.
Yeah, because I think I'll break it down like this: Matt Serra beat, and didn't just beat, he finished, and with a great game plan. He came in with a game plan, and he executed it perfectly to KO the greatest fighter ever in the sport, as of now, obviously, the GOAT. He KO'd the GOAT. Juliana Peña wine mom boxed her way into beating the the female, it's never not funny. It's never not funny. It's like a fart joke. It's always gonna be funny. My mom boxing's perfect. Um, but she legitimately beat, in my opinion, the women's goat. So, I, you know, they don't deserve it on like their career, like their like whole talent. They don't deserve it, but on that accomplishment, yeah. I sadly I can agree with that, admittingly, but also they need to stop putting so many people in the Hall of Fame. I would like a harder threshold to be in the Hall of Fame.
In my
Like maybe
yeah,
maybe 1 year just do two guys.
I think the current sort of model they've got's okay. So it's like one modern, one classic,
In a fight.
one great fight, and one sort of behind the scenes guy.
Oh yeah, that's the way to do
Like
it.
like put like Buffer or someone in.
Oh, they should. Yeah, they should put. They're never gonna put in, but they should put
Goldberg.
in Mike Goldberg. Yeah, yeah, Bill Goldberg, right?
Bill actually did some
Yeah.
commentary for like Elite XC.
Yeah, I love Chael Sonnen talking about that because Bill Goldberg used to put his arm around the opponents, and he's a monster of a man, so he instantly would like kill a lot of hype because he's just so much bigger than like the average middleweight. But yeah, Mike Goldberg 10,000% deserves to be in.
So a lot of people are framing this fight. Yeah, we are talking about Shafkat versus Wonderboy. We've got this amazing belter fight, and we're talking about like Goldberg. A lot of people believe that Shafkat's going to make this one look easy. He's just going to take Wonderboy down straight away, probably finish him on the ground, submit him, that sort of thing. But one of the things I've noticed when it comes to both fighters is a big weakness with Wonderboy's wrestling recently has been guys who can shoot a double leg. So it was something that Bilal did very effectively. It was something that Gilbert Burns did effectively. Whereas I feel like Shafkat's takedowns are more sort
Clinches.
of clinch-based, clinch and trips. Do you think that maybe might neutralize the sort of grappling offense that Shafkat possesses?
Means he's got to get in there
Yes.
and get chest to chest with him. The benefits of having a single double leg based attack, more of a freestyle wrestling, is you're able to, if you're quick, you can close that distance pretty quick with the level change. The problem with the Greco style is you kind of have to get in there. So that's gonna make cutting the cage the number one priority if he wants to take him down. And that means you're striking with him for an extended period of time, which is never fun. If you're fighting Wonder Boy, it's never a fun time trying to strike with him. So I think that's an interesting element. I think Shafkat's a very good ring cutter. He's kind of a flashier ring cutter too, because if you're circling to your right, his left, he'll just wheel kick you. 10 out of 10. That's fantastic. I think the game plan should be to get him to the ground, because one of the reasons Shafkat is kind of like my Gary Streisand. Wow. I'm like one. That's one of the. I'm very hot on the guy. Is he comes across as an A tier striker, not quite S. Let's be honest, he's not an S tier striker, but an A tier striker with an S tier grappling game, and that's super fun. And I think he can use his striking to get into a position where he can allow his grappling to take over the fight. And I think from there, he can probably call it a night. Put an end to it, with me in the background just going wow, like Streist, wow. That's my favorite. Just Streist him, wow, love it. And I think that's 3 for 3 on main card OSW references, but we're used to it, sadly. But I think he's just I think that's probably how he gets it done too. I think even though he's got to get in there, I think he can use his striking game to cut the cage off, and then potentially because Kevin Holland clinched him against the cage at one point, and it was very funny. I saw the clip this week when I was doing my like some research. I guess Kevin Holland said, "Oh, hey, my bad. I'm not gonna take you down. That was an accident." I'm like, "Oh, that's crazy. That fight's awesome. That was really fun watching that again." But if I could see Shavkat getting a clinch, and from there he's probably taking him down. And as much as Wonder Boy's grappling has, like, there's moments where it looks pretty good. It looks like it's improved a lot. It just isn't on the level, sadly. He just kind of came into the MMA way too late, I think, to have hit that elite level of the grappling, at least.
Yeah. I am picking Shavkat to win this one. I think the Wonder Boy will have enough survival skills on the ground that Shavkat isn't going to finish him. So we will see a little bit of history made. I think that Shavkat will get his first decision. The big question that comes out of this, though, if Shavkat wins, should he surpass Bilal Muhammad? And will he surpass Bilal Muhammad?
No and yes.
So you think Shavkat fights the winner of the main event?
Yeah. Or, sadly, Leon Edwards has been lately just talking about going to middleweight. I could see them doing Shavkat Bilal Muhammad.
Interim belt.
Yeah. No, for the vacant.
Oh, you think they're just going to full on strip Leon?
Maybe interim, maybe vacant. It just kind of depends.
I just don't think there would be any interest in Leon fighting the winner of Strickland DDP.
I think it's really stupid to leave a division when you've only defended your belt against the guy you beat for the belt, which is fine. I thought it's a very, very high quality win. And then your next defense is against a guy who doesn't deserve a title shot.
I've said for a while, like, that is, in my opinion, Conor's worst legacy is the obsession with double champs. Because think about, like, the dominant champions you had over the years, the GSPs, the Aldos, Mighty Mouse, Chef of the world, who kept constantly
DJs.
turning back contender after contender, 7 or 8 title defenses. Nowadays, like, a lot of the modern fan base don't hold those in as high a regard as someone like Pereira, who just got fast-tracked to 2 belts, which he didn't deserve a claim to either of them.
Yeah, that's a thing. I actually have a question. When you were bringing them up, you said, like, a couple people. I think you stuttered. I think you said Chev when you meant Grosso?
Chev, 7 title defenses.
Well, Grosso, I don't know what I was going with there. I don't have it.
I saw what you were trying to do.
I don't have one. You win this time, Chev fans.
We are staying at 125 though, albeit on the men's side, because we've got our core main event coming up here. The flyweight title is on the line, and it's our new champion Alexandre Pantoja, who is taking on Brandon Royval. So it's the number 2 seed who is looking to try and claim the belt this time. Pantoja comes in as a minus 175 favourite. You can get Royval at plus 145. A rematch from an Apex fight card, which Pantoja won by second round submission. I will say though, before we start talking about this fight, can we just give a shout out to how good the flyweight division is?
It's probably the best division right now. Maybe.
I wouldn't say it's the best division, but it's definitely the strongest this division has ever been. Because this was a division which was on the chopping block. Like, the UFC were very, very close to getting rid of it. They started cutting people like Dustin Ortiz. Brandon Moreno left the promotion, had to fight an LFA for a little bit. And now, I think it's up there as sort of like maybe like the 3rd or the 4th best weight class. Like, what in your opinion has caused flyweight to sort of boom in the way it has?
I don't know. I wonder if I have a theory. I would want to, like, see the timeline of events and, like, all the data in front of me. But I wonder when they started signing these guys, because Brandon Royval, I think he debuted in 2020. They signed him post.
It was definitely lockdown. Definitely lockdown.
Yeah, I think one of the catalysts of it was probably, I wonder if it was TJ talking smack, going like, I'm gonna go down there and shut this whole division down, and then afterwards I'm gonna eat a big old thing of SpaghettiOs. I don't know. He looks like a toddler still. He can't grow facial hair. I say that as, I mean, we both can grow facial hair. I have to. I didn't want to make another EPO joke on him again. I've done that so many times. But I made one in a recent video. But yeah, I think I know Moreno came after that fight with Cejudo and Dillashaw. Um, I wonder if, like, I think they started signing guys when they realized, well, I guess we're keeping this division. And on top of that, you had guys like Figueiredo, who wasn't near the title picture when they had Mighty Mouse and Cejudo fight. So he wasn't like being talked about as like the next potential guy for Mighty Mouse. Because I stand by, I think Mighty Mouse won that fight. I think it's a close fight, but I think Mighty Mouse wins it. I don't think Cejudo should have been in the champion in that spot, but I think if he did win, I think they're probably closing that division down. Dana hates Mighty Mouse.
And I was going to mention Mighty Mouse as well, because I want to stress, I have a lot of respect for Demetrius Johnson. I think he's one of the best fighters of all time. Do you think that Mighty Mouse leaving and sort of... Because the big issue that you had was Mighty Mouse was just turning back contenders after contenders, and he wasn't the biggest draw. He wasn't the more sort of like social media, sort of like the UFC weren't making a big deal trying to promote him. Mighty Mouse was quite a quiet guy, happy to sort of keep himself to himself. Do you think that him sort of leaving the weight class, so like, what's the old saying? If you take the lid off the basket and the crabs roam free? I kind of feel like that's happened. Like a lot of those people who are very good fighters, just not at Mighty Mouse's level, were now being pushed as the best thing in the weight class. And people were saying, hey, you know what? This is actually a really competitive class where you haven't got that one domineering figure at the top.
I like that theory a lot, but I feel like my one issue with it is I feel like it implies that Mighty Mouse would have never, like, Mighty Mouse would have just smoked the current guys, when I don't think that's necessarily true. I think Figueiredo gives him a lot of potential issues. I think Brandon Moreno would have given him some issues. I think Pantoja, and I don't know if Royval would have, but I could see Royval hurting him, because obviously we've seen him on FC. He is human, it turns out. He can be knocked out, at least.
Because a lot of people were saying the same thing about women's flyweight when there was a massive gap between Chev and the rest of the field. It wasn't until that gap got closed up that people started to realise, you know what, this actually is a really good weight class.
I wonder if it was like people coming into their own, like Figueiredo, and I think him getting promoted more,
yes,
allows him to. I think that him getting promoted more allows him to change camps, spend more money on travel, and because let's be honest, UFC pays $40 basically. It feels like it pays him like $40 to fight. So getting promoted more means you're making $60. You can spend that extra bit of money to pay for your own training. You get better training. You get better sparring partners. You're able to fly out or fly people in, and that's going to elevate things. I wonder if that helped the division out. Maybe weird putting resources and promotion into
Who'd
a
have
division.
thought
It makes it good. Weird. It's like the UFC's a promotion. Weird, but and I think and on top of that, they started re-signing guys who had talent and were really coming to Brandon Moreno's he's my age, so he was 26, 27 when he won his belts. When he won the first belt, I think he was 24 or 25 when he got cut. So he wasn't even coming into his own. Pantoja was super hot. He just kind of stuttered against Tim Elliott, and then Tim Elliott nearly finished Mighty Mouse in that fight. And so Pantoja, I thought was he was moving up, he was coming into his own because he's still pretty young, and I think with I'm actually starting to be convinced here. I think Dana White just hates Mighty Mouse so much. He's never getting into the Hall of Fame if we're on the Hall of Fame thing. Mighty Mouse is never getting in, and it's a darn shame because Mighty Mouse is a top 3 fighter ever, in my opinion, at least, if not 2. Like, and I think with him gone, it's like, well, I guess we're keeping it. It'd be really funny to spite Mighty Mouse. Let's talk about how effing awesome these guys are, you know, and that allowed the division to grow and thrive.
So we'll talk about one of the fighters in this main event first, which is our champion Pantoja. So his last fight, he got himself his second, depending on where you think about it, his third win over Brandon Moreno at UFC 290, which is a fantastic fight, in my opinion, one of the top 10, maybe top 5 of the year. God, I just love that.
Yeah,
I love that striker versus grappler dynamic. I love the fact that Moreno would start building momentum, sort of pacing up Pantoja, who would then get the takedown, only for Moreno to scramble to his feet. One of the things I will say, though, you mentioned promotion there when it comes to the flyweights. I do think the UFC maybe missed a trick when it comes to promoting Pantoja, because the big thing that stood out for me when Pantoja won that fight, he told that story about what he went through to reach this sort of pedestal. And I was just thinking to myself, imagine if the UFC had sort of made people more aware of Pantoja and got that story into the sort of public conscious a little bit earlier. Because I think a lot of people going into that fight just saw Pantoja as Brandon Moreno's next opponent. If they told that story and made people really care and root for this guy, I think that the sort of fan perception of him would have been much better. I'm not saying that people dislike Pantoja, I'm just saying that they didn't know Pantoja, which they should do going into a title fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big problem when, you know, once again, going back to it's like, I think it's a really bad issue the UFC has where they're a fight promotion and a fight organization. They're both. Dana White is the president and head promoter of the UFC, just not giving a damn about promoting anything, unless it's Connor or someone talking smack, so it's really easy. Like, oh, less effort. It's easy just to talk about this guy. And I think that he would have a lot of goodwill, you know, maybe even a fan favorite, which, you know, I don't know how controversial that fight is. I don't actually remember. I remember thinking Moreno won, but I'm also biased. So
I think the consensus I saw was you could make an argument Moreno won, but on the whole, people thought Pantoja.
I feel like I think I talked, now that I think about it, I remember talking about it in the recap where I said maybe I'm the hypocrite because I mentioned how I didn't score it for Islam when Islam just held the back for dear life, hoping for the best. I didn't score it for Islam when he did that against Makhachev in round 4 of their first fight. I didn't score it for Pantoja when Pantoja did against Moreno, and but I scored it for Talia Santos when she did it to Chev. I admittingly poked fun at myself for like, oh, I'm just a hypocrite, it turns out. So I don't know. That's a weird thing because like having the back, that's one of the best positions.
It takes a lot of work to get the back.
Yeah, but then when you do nothing with it, it just kind of sours my taste in my mouth and makes me just like you get to a dominant position, then you just kind of hold the guy. I don't know. When it's like when it's deliberate stalling, I don't know. It kind of rubs a bad taste in my mouth, which I think I'm very biased against.
So you watched the first fight between Pantoja and Royval, and we sort of highlighted this. It was just who was the main event of the Apex card that they fought at?
Cannonier and
Gastelum. I know nothing about that fight. I remember nothing about that fight, but
I remember it.
But we did watch this. We did watch the first fight between the two. What were your big takeaways? What do you think both fighters can learn from that fight?
Royval should not go to the ground with this guy. Royval is... How do I describe him? He's like he's like a perpetual Tasmanian devil, like the cartoon character out there. I know his nickname is Raw Dog, which is awesome. But Darren Till might have ruined it for me. Still one of the funniest running jokes in MMA. But yeah, he's like, are you going to strike with him? He's going to come at you with a random flying knee, maybe 15 spinning back elbows. Maybe he'll just throw like another 40 flying knees and a spin kick. Who knows? And then you take him down, and it's like, I'm going to throw 40 triangle chokes in a row. What? Like, and scramble on you randomly. He really couldn't do that. He attempted it against Pantoja, but Pantoja is a much better grappler than him and had the technical ability and the strength to kind of plant him and keep him in position to fully take advantage of those situations, and then just eventually got that choke in. It really seemed like Royval's length led to Pantoja just being able to get a hold of him better, in my opinion.
Because the times that I saw that Royval was having success was when it was a distance striking match. He was landing some good shots on him.
Yeah. But he can't go to the ground with this guy.
Yeah.
Just, it sucks too, because Royval's grappling is so much fun.
Yeah, I just think that a guy like Pantoja is such an Achilles heel for a guy who relies so much on that scrambling game.
Yeah. Just it's not a good idea, you know? Because best case, you survive and it goes to the judges' scorecards, where this guy was the aggressor on the ground against you. Worst case is he takes your neck again.
One thing I will say, though, which is a positive when it comes to Brandon Royval, so we'll talk about him in a little bit more detail. 15-6 record, 5-2 so far in the UFC. The 2 losses coming against Pantoja in that first fight. He also lost to Brandon Moreno at 255, which was a title eliminator, it turned out. But I will say, like, when it comes to Brandon Royval, a lot is made of his scrambling ability, which is so fun to watch. And I think that's one of the best things about the flyweight division, is just how fast these guys are on the ground. And I know there's a lot of people who are just like, oh god, any kind of jiu-jitsu, any kind of wrestling, I hate it. Watch the flyweight division, it will completely change your mind. And now they've got the power as well. I think that's another factor why the division's got as good as it is.
The power, that finishing.
Brandon Royval is not a technician, but he's chaotic and he can crack. And if you look at some of his big moments in the UFC, it's Kai Kara France dropping him, and it's finishing Nicolau with that jumping knee.
Yeah, then elbowing him to death afterwards, which was haunting, but awesome. The KKF fight is my favorite of Royval's career. Yeah, because there's a sequence where Kai Kara France, who is the better striker than him, properly blasts him. And Royval's like, oh, this is bad. And then he throws a spinning elbow in like a panic state and clobbers him with that shot. And then drops him hard with it. And then they go back and forth on the ground, like, just, it is just chef's kiss, dude. Just, love it. Yeah.
So what would you say is Brandon Royval's best path to victory, do you think?
I think Pantoja, we talked about, the clinching up and shooting double legs freestyle and Greco kind of ways of getting into the ground. Pantoja kind of mixes it up a little bit. I think if I am Royval, I'm looking at calf kicks, because that is a lot lower to reach down to try and get a hold of your leg. So that's one benefit of calf kicks over thigh kicks. It's the risk of being taken down is non-existent almost. So I think calf kicks, I really want to suggest like straight kicks. I was talking about that, how much I love straight kicks. Snap kicks up the middle to
double leg,
create the distance. Yeah, that's the thing. Oh, you know what?
What are you suggesting that Brandon Royval just jilted Almeida Pantoja?
I mean, that's what's gonna beat John Jones. Like, last time I checked, Yelton Almeida he had that barn burner flat too.
That's one of the best fights of the year.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Opposite day just ended. Our 24 hours are up. I love how Dana White admitted, "Oh, we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen." Oh, I wish he'd said that before I started watching it for the recap.
I love the fact that we called that recap. He can't keep getting away with this.
I had my proper Jesse Pinkman moment. You know, I think that's one of my favorites ever. You can't keep getting away with it. I think I really want to suggest low kick or snap kicks and steep kicks up the middle, but I feel like that's how you get a leg caught by a guy who's gonna want to take you down. I wonder if he can jumping knee, try and time him there. I don't think you should spin at all. That's actually number one. Just don't spin, because I'm not making a joke here.
Back takers. You spin, you give up the back.
Yeah, thank you. I was it's like playing with fire. It's like being near a bar as like a former alcoholic. You're just tempted. I made my one Chev joke this show. I'm not breaking it. You know, I've been good today.
I think there are two big X factors that I do have, and I just want your opinion on these. The first off is, for a good portions of his career, Pantoja was known for having quite a poor gas tank. Now, he maybe did alleviate some of those concerns by obviously getting the 5-rounder against Brandon Moreno. Is that maybe something that could be brought back to the table, bearing in mind the pace that Brandon Royval puts on people? But also as well, Pantoja is 34 and coming off an absolute war where he was pieced up a lot by Brandon Moreno.
I thought he was I thought he looked kind of tired near the end of that fight.
Do you think his durability might be called into question?
I don't know if his durability is. I think his gas tank is his biggest weakness. I think he's pretty durable. Like, Brandon Moreno doesn't have that, like, Figueiredo kind of power, but he took just a large amount of shots constantly in that fight. I don't think it's I think it's his cardio, because I felt like half the time when he took and got a good position, he was just taking a breather on the ground, because I think his cardio is still a problem. You know what? We haven't talked about those infamous Pantoja blitzes yet. You know, remember he did that a ton for a long time, and that was like his only thing. That he would do that until he gets tired, or he would just win. You know what I mean? And like take you down after a blitz. I wonder if, I think knees are a pretty decent strategy against Pantoja, especially if you're the tall, lanky guy, kind of bringing a knee in there. I think if you're kneeing, you're hitting in the midsection, in the gut, in the body. All those are fantastic. If you use it to intercept him coming in on a blitz or trying to get a takedown, anything like that, I think that's really good against a guy with who has cardio questions. And obviously the flying knee is there. But I wonder if Royval has the counter punching, because he definitely has the power. But I wonder if he has the counter punching to catch him on a blitz. But that said, Pantoja didn't really blitz Moreno. No. I don't remember. No, he was pretty patient in that fight.
I think the safe bet is to go for Pantoja to win this one. I think it's maybe going to go a little bit longer than the first fight, so I'm going to say Pantoja by a 3rd-round submission. I do think Royval has more of a chance if it goes longer in the fight. But you know, sometimes your gut just says something to you. And you just think, I can't help but shake this feeling that this is going to happen. I think Brandon Royval is a real live dog in this fight. I can see him catching like Pantoja with like a knee or something coming in.
Mm-hmm. I think if he does it, it's a knee, or a counter punch. You know, I think I'm personally not a betting man, but if I was, I wouldn't shy away from Royval here if you have some, looking to play. I think he's definitely a live
Plus 145, I think is real value for money with Brandon Royval.
Yeah, I think you can definitely drop some value there. I think I am picking Pantoja. I'm just trying to think of when, because my brain says fourth round, but then thinking about the cardio problems, I think third round's a safe bet. I'll uh I'll be I'll copy you here. I think third round's a safe bet, and I even will go so far. I think rear naked choke. I'll even pick how he does it.
Yeah. I'm leaning towards
but I think it's probably
towards
how,
rear naked choke as well.
Yeah, I think that's how he's going to catch him. I think he's just going to take his back. And, I was thinking of what Michael Chiesa said about fighting James Vick on The Ultimate Fighter. It's like, this guy is tall, lanky, and a better striker than me. Thank God it's so easy to take a tall tower down. Or something. He said something like that, like a tall building down. I was like, yeah, it's fair, Or he said a tall tree.
I was going to say, tall building would create a lot of scandal.
Yeah, actually, yeah, think about it. Yeah, that's a good point. Is he take a tall tree down?
Quite appropriate. We're talking about controversy. Colby Covington's coming next.
And how did he earn this title shot?
Our main event time, and we are talking about the welterweight title fight. It is Leon Edwards who is defending his belt for the second time up against Colby Covington, who is inexplicably still the number 2 ranked seed in the welterweight division. Betting odds for this one, you can get Leon Edwards at minus 150. Colby comes in at plus 125. So, Joe, I will set the scene for you. Colby Covington enters this fight with 2 wins and 2 losses in his past 4. The 2 wins being Robbie Lawler and Jorge Masvidal, who have both since retired from the sport. Currently, he holds 0 wins over ranked welterweights, and his only win over a fighter who is currently ranked is RDA, which was that interim title fight at UFC 225. He hasn't fought in nearly 2 years. Why is he fighting for the title now?
I have a joke answer.
I'd like to hear it.
It's Dana White's also a Republican. No, Colby Covington I don't actually believe is a Republican. I'm not even into politics, but I just that's the only thing I could think of.
I think a good portion. A good portion of the. I'm tempted to say that quite a few MMA fighters do lean Republican.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think that's a common thing. Most of my friends are Democrats because I'm a younger generation. And for the record, I think you know what? Yeah, I am a registered Democrat as well, but I don't vote anymore. That's another story. I've noticed that too. Like a lot of other fighters are typically Republicans. Obviously, Colby is playing a character. I firmly believe he's playing a heel persona. I just think Jorge Masvidal doesn't understand what pro wrestling is and thought it was real. That's my personal theory. I don't know. I legitimately don't know.
Because there's a lot of sort of catch-22s when it comes to Colby. Like, I've heard a lot of people try and justify reasons for this because there's some people saying that, well, Colby's an all-action fighter. He's much more exciting than Bilal. And I was thinking, is he really? Like, a lot of his fights go to a decision. He doesn't really have that much power on his hands. Yes, the 2 Usman fights were very good, but I think that was more of a stylistic matchup, them 2 working off well off one another. And I think that was a big reason that those 2 fights were as entertaining as they were. And I'm not really a Colby fan, but I'll admit, those 2 fights were great.
Yeah. Oh, they're awesome.
And also, you have some people saying that it's because of Colby's character, it generates clicks, it generates views. And I was thinking, yes, that would have done in 2017, 2018, when Donald Trump was in office and the whole sort of Make America Great Again character was at its most prevalent. Does that really have the same impact in 2023?
No. American who lives in the South, where that is a very popular, that was a very, popular motif in the South. No, that didn't work. I don't think it works now necessarily. I have no idea. I will say I think he is much more exciting. I struggle to think of a good Bilal Muhammad fight. Sean Brady, I guess, first one I always think of. I struggle to think of a second one. I could think of about 3 or 4 good Colby Covington fights.
I think with Bilal Law, and I say this with every fighter in any weight class, I think if you have two fighters who have an equal claim to a title fight,
meritocracy.
you go for the bigger name. You go for the star power. I completely get that from a business perspective. But when there's one guy who is so substantially ahead of everyone else that you have to acknowledge that. And in my opinion, Bilal is in that position.
Yeah.
Like, the guy hasn't lost in, 10 or 11 fights?
Yeah. He's, he also has a story.
Yes.
Built into this title fight. His last fight that he didn't win, he was getting smoked, but you never say never. And then, like, here's my pitch for a trailer for how you pitch it is you have Joe Rogan and all them going like, Leon Edwards looks phenomenal out here. He is demolishing Belal Muhammad, he's just dominating his opponent. And then you cut to the eye poke, and then you just have a saying like, or something like, a fight's not over till it's over, and then you show the head kick. Like,
yes,
it is picture perfect. You never know, and I struggled to stay awake when one of my favorite guys at welterweight, Gilbert Burns, fought Belal Muhammad, and I have almost chills thinking of the promotions and the story built in there with Belal Muhammad fighting Leon, but I don't know. I legitimately have no idea. It is one of the more baffling things of all time.
Would you say it's one of the top 10 most undeserved title shots?
It's probably time for another video.
It was the first one I ever made. First one I ever made was undeserved title shots, and then for episode 100, I redid it with like some modern ones, changed some people around, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have Fight Pass, so I couldn't get any John Lober, hence why he wasn't in the first video.
Yeah, well, third installment, Colby Covington, #1.
That being said, we are clowning on Colby not earning this title fight, and I stand by that. I don't think he deserves it. I think stylistically, though, he could be a very, very tough ask for Leon. I think the best meta, in my opinion, in MMA is the cardio wrestler. It's the reason why I'm so high on Marab. I think, again, he should be another guy who should be fighting for the title next.
Yeah.
And Colby fits that bill. Or at least Prime Colby did. Because it was just constant, I'm just going to keep peppering you with just kicks and punches. And then when you're a bit overwhelmed by that, I'm diving in to take the legs.
Yeah. I think that's the best style as well. I also think Colby has zero. In a video game, his power is at a 0, but it's just, and he's never going to finish you with strikes. I don't even think, like we talked about like the Tony and like Moreno, and just how the accumulation is what builds up for the finish. Colby Covington's never doing that to you. Funny enough, he's going to hit you 1,000 times more. He's still not going to finish you. But it's going to suck, and it's going to make you tired, and he's going to make you look dumb out there if he just keeps hitting you. And Tyron Woodley, so past his prime. He destroyed Tyron Woodley at every level of that fight, with just constant pressure. And yeah, I don't know.
And the other thing as well with Tyron Woodley is, and another reason why I have concerns for Leon is, Tyron Woodley, especially later on in his career, became far too patient, waiting for that moment to try and land that big right hand, and he would just keep missing the opportunities. Just the reflexes weren't there anymore.
And Leon's
if I have a big criticism of Leon Edwards, it's his patience.
Yeah, that's the thing I worry about. Because Usman was constantly coming at him, right? But have the volume, coming forward at him. It's just walking forward like this. Colby's coming at you, and once he's in range, he's throwing like 80 things at you. So, like, Leon has good cardio. He has good footwork that can frustrate Colby. He's got a great counter shot. He's a little too patient for it sometimes, If they clinch up, that's going to be interesting because I love watching Leon Edwards in the open clinch.
His clinch work I love it.
Yeah.
One of the big sort of traits that people have noted with Leon Edwards, something I've noticed as well, is it's not so much what he does in the clinch.
He does out.
Yeah, it's coming out of it. He releases, and then comes the elbow. Caught RDA multiple times with it. I think he dropped Gunny with one of those clinch elbows.
Mm-hmm. The Cerrone was the first time I went, oh, hey, this guy's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Because in that Cerrone fight, they clinch up a ton in the over-under clinch out in the center of the octagon. And Cerrone's like trying to get like his, they always say the underrated wrestling of Cerrone. He's trying to get something going there. And Leon Edwards is just kneeing him in the gut. So many times it was red. And then they break. Here comes the elbow. Like every time. It was hilarious. And I thought he was going to finish Nate Diaz with that. I was like, Nate Diaz, one of the most active elbower in the game on the feet against one of the guys with the most scar tissue ever. Yeah, this fight's getting called by that. Also, that anyone who holds that over Leon's head is whatever.
And a lot of people properly downplayed Leon going into the Usman fight because of what happened against Diaz.
Yeah. I will say this. I think Diaz hits a lot harder than Colby.
Yeah.
And he's also got better hands than Colby, I think. So it makes sense for him to catch Leon eventually. Could you imagine, though, if Nate just didn't point and laugh? Like how history plays out?
Usman versus Diaz would have been so one-sided.
It would have been awful. You and me would have been like pulling our hair out, having to talk about it. We would have just talked about OSW.
Well, we do anyway. When we went off a tangent about the Hall of Fame about Shavkat versus Wonderboy. I felt so bad.
Well, I felt bad too because that was actually my pick for fight of the night.
Yeah.
That fight's gonna be fight of the night, but.
One thing I have noticed with Colby, though, and I think this may be something to highlight, especially bearing in mind the long time away from the sport. In Colby's, I think I'm going to say, in Colby's last two losses, I would say his last two fights, I should say, he's been dropped. Masvidal cracked him, I think, in the fourth round of their fight. And, of course, Kamaru dropped him twice in the second fight and also dropped him again in their first fight.
Yeah.
Is Colby's chin maybe not as good as people make it out to be?
I think it's... I always talk about this. I always forget who I use it as an example. Oh, Dan Henderson. I use Dan Henderson as an example. I've seen Dan Henderson get knocked down multiple times in his career pre-TRT tour destroying the chin. I've seen him get knocked down multiple times in his career. I think it's okay to get knocked down, and have a good chin. I think that's fine.
It's how you handle getting knocked down.
Yeah, not to quote Rocky Balboa, but it's kind of like that.
Because hot take alert, I don't think Frankie Edgar had the best chin. What Frankie Edgar was really good at was knowing what to do when he was hurt.
Yeah, I think he legitimately was knocked unconscious in multiple fights, and then just came to. I think he had the best instincts ever. Also, I think there's only one fight I can think of. Well, there's a couple of fights when I think of like Frankie Edgar having a good chin, but there is one fight in particular where I go, wow, Frankie's chin may be like the real deal. Funny, that's his nickname, isn't it? Frankie the Real Deal Edgar? Was that
the answer?
No, it was the answer. The Real Deal somebody, though.
Holyfield.
Yes, it is Holyfield. Oh, man. But I don't disagree with your take. I think Frankie had a good chin, but I definitely see what you're coming. I think his instincts are just unbelievable when he's half unconscious, But in my favorite fight of all time, my beloved Aldo Edgar 1, my number one fight ever, he gets hit with an up kick or with a front kick up the middle, and he looks like he goes out for a second, and then it's like, okay, I'm here. Like, it's a very weird scenario.
Yeah. I think one of the areas where I think this could be decided, in my opinion, is I think it's given. I think Colby is going to take Leon down at some point during this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things Leon showed in the Usman fight, the third one, was his ability to deal with the takedowns. Because, like, Usman would sort of like press him up against the fence, but Leon would just scramble to his feet and just power out. He did this thing as well where he sort of like reaching over to one side to sort of like take away. It was almost sort of like a Kimura grip, and just eventually power out of it, and then Usman had to keep standing with him.
Yeah, he kind of Sakurabba'd him a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big concern for me, though, in regards to Colby, because I think Leon could get away with doing that against Usman, because Usman doesn't have that sort of back take and that submission game. We have seen Colby take people's back and go for rear naked chokes.
Mm-hmm. For me, I could see how many times did Usman even do that is like the thing. Like, Usman got him to the fence and really almost had him maybe a handful of times. Whereas I fear Colby doing that the entire fight. Like, I kind of think of, if I remember right, I think it's RDA Colby Covington, where I think Colby got like 2 takedowns, but he just pressed him against that cage, Holly homed him, shot a double leg, Holly homed him, shot a double, couldn't get it, Holly homed him. Just on repeat to the point where it's like, dude, yeah, like, how do you not give it to Colby even though nothing really happened? I kind of fear that. I'm hoping Leon is prepared for that kind of style. I would love it if Leon just, started bringing down the side.
The Travis Brown elbows.
Yeah, I would actually kind of like that, admittingly. Or, what do you think happens if Leon takes Colby down?
It's possible. I mean, he took Usman down.
Yeah, and he's not a bad grappler himself.
And I can't see Colby being in that position a lot, where he's on his back having to defend against someone on top of him. I think that is an interesting wrinkle.
That's interesting.
I think it's going to be one of those fights, I think we're going to get a lot of strange scorecards in this one. I think it's that kind of fight, because I can see situations where Colby's like pressing Leon up against the fence but not really doing anything with it, and Leon maybe landing some big punches that maybe steal him the round. It's one of those kind of fights. I think it's a lot more competitive than people think. I think a lot of people are looking at Colby's age and inactivity and thinking Leon's going to blow him through. Colby Covington has a very realistic avenue to winning this fight, in my opinion. And even though I'm not big on the guy, I am picking Colby to win this one.
Wow. I think this is what I hate about this fight. Colby absolutely doesn't deserve to be here. And I think he can make a fight with any guy at this level competitive.
Yes.
And I hate it. I think he'd have a competitive fight against Bilal. I think he'd have a competitive fight against Shavkat before getting finished. Wow. Gotta do it. That's my Gary Streisand. Like, wow. And I think he has a very competitive fight with Leon. I think Leon wins a close decision. Or I also wonder if the inactivity and the age, and I don't know if did Masvidal in that like when Masvidal jumped him, I know he knocked the tooth out. Did he put him out?
I don't think so.
If Masvidal put him out, then it kind of makes you go, okay, well, maybe it's gonna, once you get KO'd once, it's easier every time. Maybe Leon can do it.
And here's one final point that I'll make before we start wrapping things up. If Colby was to win, here's one of the big concerns I have about a Colby win. We've seen with this 2-year gap that Colby is willing to sit and wait to get the fights he wants. He has no issue with sort of being inactive and sort of holding up a weight class. Can you really see him fighting Bilal or Shavkat in 5 months' time, 6 months' time?
No.
I guarantee he will call out Makhachev or Poirier. I guarantee.
Yeah. I think he wants Poirier. He's gonna want the money fights. That's what his persona wants. This is how I know it's a persona, by the way. He has the best entrance name ever.
Kurt Angle.
That's how you know it's a persona. It's a very on the nose thing to do. Yeah, but I think he's obviously he does. He wants money. You know, UFC pays him $15 a fight, and you know, I don't quite blame him when you're that late in your career wanting money fights. But if he's champion and dodges Bilal or Shavkat, oh my God, we are going to put him on the list in part 2 of the worst UFC champions ever.
Nico Montano, you have a contender.
Like, oh man. Oh man, oh man.
So that is all the time that we have here for the UFC 296 preview show. It's been an absolute blast to talk about the entire card with you, Joe, as ever.
Always a pleasure.
And if you would like to support us on the channel, then you can do so at patreon.com/It's Not Cagefighting. There, in return for your donation, we will also cover a retro review of your choice. We are in December, so it's our last one before the end of the year. We still have a couple of Brucey bonuses coming up, but we do have one which has a loose connection to UFC 296. Joe, explain what we're covering, what category, and which card we're doing.
So for 296, we decided to go with classic flyweight fights. And who's more classic than Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson? So I got to cover a fight card that I did not expect to win, and I had good memories of, but I wasn't quite sure, and I was so pleasantly surprised at how good this card was. UFC on Fox, I think it's 6, but it's Mighty Mouse and John Dodson.
A fantastic fight, and also as well the undercard as well, pretty stacked for a fight night.
Let's just say we finally get to see what's on this side of the wall, and it's glorious.
Yes. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that one, because I fully expected 178 to win.
Yeah, me too. I was like, wait, really? Okay. You know, I think that undercard's better, maybe. And I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is way better than I remember it being.
So, UFC 296 will be just around the corner. We hope you've enjoyed this preview show. My name has been Karl Bainbridge. That's been Joe Neal. We want to wish you a very Merry Christmas here from INC Live, and we will be back in 2024 for the first pay-per-view of the year, and counting down to the most eagerly anticipated UFC title fight of all time, Raquel Pennington vs. Mayra Bueno Silva.
You think you're Spanish?
You do.